Kind of running out of daylight, and the mosquitoes are probably going to be out, so let's real quick talk about this bike. So the bike is a Bontrager Privateer Comp. I've had it for a while. I did buy this one secondhand. It's been updated a little bit, and I refreshed it kind of recently, so thought it might be a good opportunity to talk about it. This bike originally would have come with a full Shimano Deore XT parts kit, including the shifters, the brake levers, the brakes, the hubs, the crankset, and the derailleurs. Originally, the fork would have been a Rock Shox Judy XC, and the handlebar would have been a 25.4 clamp Bontrager handlebar. The stem would have been a quill Bontrager stem, and this being a medium, it would have been about 110 millimeters long. Would have had a Tange threaded headset and a seat post that clamped in the center at the top of the seat post, as opposed to being set back like that. It may be a side effect of spending more time on my road bike these days, but it seems like to get the most comfortable position in relation to the pedals, I want a seat post that's set back a little bit to get the right position behind the pedals. The fork on here now is a Marzocchi Bomber, and it has a 1-inch threadless steer tube. I went ahead and used a shim so that I could install an 1.125" stem, and the shim is long enough to go underneath these spacers. The spacers are also 1.125". The headset on here is a 1-inch threadless FSA Orbit X. The handlebar is a Truvative with a 31.8 clamp diameter, and yes, I do still have L-bend bar ends on it. It originally came with a Velo saddle, and I'm currently using a Bontrager Inform saddle. These are honestly my favorite. I buy these 5 at a time if I find the right price on them. They're not super spendy, and I like the shape. I also put some new grips on the bike recently. They are some grips that I picked up on AliExpress. They do have a clamping ring on one side, not both. I think it's because of the light that my camera won't focus. A friend of mine sold me some old XTR parts a while back, and I thought this would be a good bike to put them on, including the cranks, front derailleur, the rear derailleur, and the shifter brake levers. The brakes on there now are the Shimano XT with the parallel push from 1997 or so, as you can see. The Privateer Comp was designed to be an alternative to buying a Bontrager Race made in Santa Cruz. These were made by Trek in their Waterloo facility, and apparently they were about 95% of the performance and about half the price. A Bontrager Privateer frame is 4130 double-butted chromoly. It still has the signature butterfly gussets at the head tube, top tube junction, and the head tube, down tube junction. And it does have the no bridge chainstays. It has a chain deflector device underneath where the crankset is on the chainstays. It's got the Bontrager bulletproof dropouts. Wow, this camera's terrible at night. and the signature wishbone seat stays. Like I said, compared to a Bontrager Race, this frame is about a ½ pound heavier. Compared to a Bontrager Race Light, it's about a pound heavier. Now, I do realize that I've messed up the geometry by putting a Marzocchi bomber on there, not only because the travel is different than the original fork, which would have been about 80 millimeters, but because Keith Bontrager used his own proprietary fork crowns on the Judy XC forks that these were spec'd with. You may find that all the original Bontrager forks that came with these privateer bikes had a black fork crown, whereas all the other Rock Shox forks at the time came with silver fork crowns. This was to designate them as having that different fork rake or angle to match up with the geometry of a Bontrager frame. And because it did raise up the front end a little bit, I went ahead and flipped the stem over when I installed it to give it kind of a negative rise. And this is a Bontrager blender stem. Man, the mosquitoes are biting. Here's one I just squished. The only other changes that I made recently are I added a different pump on the bike here and different bottle cages. I used to have profile polymer cages on here, or plastic cages and nylon cages, and now I've got these little aluminum ones. I'm going to try them out and see how I like them. And like I was saying earlier, I did swap in a different seat post. This one is a 27.0 Uno stem, or seat post, pardon me. Not super expensive, but I like it a lot. Bontrager bikes really did have a little different geometry than what was popular at the time. That was part of the reason they had to have those unique suspension forks just for Bontragers when they first came out. When I started working at Sun and Ski Sports Expo in Houston, we had reps from other companies come out and talk to us about the products. You know, one rep was telling us about how they heat treated the welds to T6 tensile strength after they hand sanded them, and how great their frames were. The Bontrager rep actually came out when they first started carrying Bontrager bikes, and he was this real laid-back guy. He told us this story about Keith Bontrager, I guess, going to a Trek corporate meeting and wearing a secondhand Brooks Brothers suit, and then someone finally telling him at the end of the meeting that he'd put on 2 different colored shoes. I guess he'd gotten up real early for the meeting and gotten dressed in the dark, and he had a brown shoe and a black shoe on. I don't know how true this story is, but that's what the guy came from Bontrager to tell us. As far as the bikes go, he sort of said, you know, how many warranties do you think most bike manufacturers take in? Then he explained to us, for our Bontragers, we did 1 warranty last year, and it was a JRA. Anyone who's worked at a bike shop knows that JRA means just riding along. As in, dude, I was just riding along and a bike just went blah! I wanted a race or a race light so bad when I worked back there. And I'd saved up a bunch of money, and then my girlfriend at the time talked me into paying off her credit card instead. And I didn't end up getting a race or a race light until years and years later. I did, however, buy a Bontrager Privateer S, which was the model down from this, which is actually still extremely well equipped, but it came with a Rock Shox Indy fork, a little bit simpler than the Rock Shox Judy fork that this one would have come with. and it had a few Shimano Deore LX parts mixed in with the XT parts, specifically the crankset, the brakes, and the brake levers, and the front derailleur. And it was in a cool burgundy color. I never knew what to think exactly of this color for the Bontrager Privateer Comp. It's a really cool British racing green, but the red and the yellow, I mean, I think it's honestly supposed to be a call out to Rastafarian colors. But it always, the red and green seemed just a little bit too Christmassy. So up until just the other day, I had an old chromoly Kelly threadless stem on here with a 1-inch, it was a 1-inch stem and these smaller spacers on there, and the spacers were way different diameter than the stem clamp, where it clamped around the steer tube of the fork, and the whole setup just looked kind of weird. And it had a silver Chris King headset that was, it came with the bike when I bought it used, but it was like the most scratched up headset you've ever seen. So I don't know. I honestly do ride my race light a lot off-road around here on simple single track, and I hadn't ridden this bike as much recently, and I thought that maybe giving it a little bit different look with some new parts might get me more excited about it. And yeah, I'm kind of psyched to take this on a few rides. One of the spots I like to ride is kind of flooded now. We've recently had a lot of rain, but I'm hoping to take it out to a few places here pretty soon. I'm getting bitten to shreds, so I'm gonna end this, but I wanted to do a quick video about the Bontrager Privateer Comp. I don't know. I mean, you can probably see the mosquitoes swarming me in this video. Maybe I'll do a better video sometime in the future, but I wanted to try and shoot something real quick. Take care. I've always loved how nimble and agile this bike feels off-road. I'm just riding home right now, but it has a really nimble feel to it. It's the geometry's always been just right for me. You know, you skid into a turn and the two wheels kind of break together, and I'm able to really accelerate well out of corners. I just like the way this bike handles. Okay, sure, I thought it was done, but I'm not done. And if I sound even dumber now, it's because the mosquitoes have taken about 1 liter of blood. I also added some Shimano XT pedals recently, and I don't know, maybe my camera will focus a little better on some of the parts on this bike with a little bit more sunlight involved. Everybody knows that the old Shimano Deore XT brakes use kind of a parallelogram system to get the pads to press flat together against the rims, as opposed to following the sort of arcing pattern that the brake arms made. But the Deore XT front derailleur actually has kind of a parallelogram system as well, where the two sides of the link plate moved a little bit independently of each other, which is kind of a neat trick. The advantage of the Marzocchi Bomber fork, of course, is that it is much more plush and serviceable. I will say that it adds a little bit of weight, and I don't know, I'm okay with the weight penalty on this bike. The parts kit is fairly light, and The frame itself is respectably light. And by the way, guys, no matter what you put in the comments, I'm not getting rid of the bar ends. Bar ends for life. Yeah, so you might be thinking this is just a great place to bolt in a connection for a fender or a rack. But legend has it that if you somehow did something so catastrophically insane that you were able to fail this weld while you were riding, you can jump into your parts toolkit and steal a water bottle bolt from where your water bottle is installed and bolt this frame back together and ride it home that way. And that it'll get you down the road until you can have the frame welded back together. From what I'm told, not many of them failed here anyway, so but that's sort of an interesting bit of lore when it comes to Bontrager frames. I don't know if that's true, honestly, but I mean, you can see that the hole goes all the way through. It is threaded, I believe, all the way through. And you can see where it's kind of recessed there, where you could put that bolt in and through from the inside so that it wouldn't jut into the cogs. You can't really see it here. That terrific wishbone stay that once Trek purchased Bontrager, they adopted for a lot of their frames. This is missing the seat post slot gusset, aka a little cut old piece of inner tube that they used to have right here. So I've got plenty of inner tubes I haven't thrown away yet that I can cut one and stick it on there. And there are some scars in the paint of this frame, but honestly the decals are in great shape. Weird color choice, I think. Seems like the videos go a little bit better when they're about bikes that I'm actually knowledgeable about. Who would have thought?